Hey guys, Mephisto has been added into the public test realm. He is a short-range mage with a large health pool. He's very good at getting in, dealing a decent amount of damage, and getting out in short burst fights. And in long fights that go for a while, he has some of the best sustained damage out of any mage in the game. He has a variety of builds, and the builds all feel very synergetic, if that's even a word. Essentially, say you want to go Q build. There's a Q talent at 1, there's a Q talent at 4, all E talents at level 7. You pick your ult. There's a Q talent at 13, a Q talent at 16. You can go all Qs, right? Say, for instance, you want to reset your talents. You want to go a W talent at 1, W talent at 4. Pick whatever you want at 7, whatever you want at 10. And then a little bit of differences here at 13. W talent at 16, W talent at 20. There are so many talents that synergize well with each other in this hero. The builds is going to be the difference between making him a pretty weak hero or a very powerful hero, purely because if you mix and match, you lose so much synergy, but if you work everything together, there's numerous builds that have a lot of potential. So let's talk about it. So to start off, let's talk about his abilities. His Q is something that you spawn a skull, and then after a short duration, it flies off. Your Q lowers the cooldown of your abilities by 1.5 seconds when it hits a hero, meaning that if you were to, let's say, zap, we've got a 13-second cooldown, send it in, boom, down to an 8. It's a pretty good one, and it's on a low cooldown by itself. Your next ability is Lightning Nova. It only deals damage in the ring around it, not outside, not inside. Yes, I'm talking a lot about a ring, but people still have confusion about it. His E is then an ability where you jump in, you deal damage, and then after 2.5 seconds you jump out. One of my favorite parts about this when I was playing Mephisto was that you could jump in, take a lot of, deal a lot of damage, and then someone would try to CC you, and then you just hop back out and you were safe. Which is why I really loved it, was because it's an easy out. Even if you're CC'd, you still pop out. So it's a nice way to get in there, start dealing a lot of damage to an enemy hero, and then jump out. But while you want to try to use everything before you jump out. But it's just a safe way to deal a lot of damage. So those are his 3 major abilities. His passive, all the damage that his abilities do lower the cooldown of his other abilities. So Skull Missile and Shade of Mephisto, these two will reduce it by 1.5 seconds when you deal damage for each hero hit. And the W will reduce the cooldowns by 0.3 seconds. So you can see maybe if you did like a Q, E, and then you did your W, it doesn't lower the cooldown as much as the other ones do, but it does. It deals much faster damage, so it still ends up lowering the cooldowns pretty fast. So you can see the Q cooldown is being dropped down really fast. So he's definitely an interesting hero. One thing that I noticed from him was that he had a lot of wave clear that people weren't using. It reminded me a lot of Maev, where Maev has a ton of wave clear, but no one uses it. So let's say I toggle cooldowns for a second. If the waves start really clustering up, he's got a lot where this entire wave's here. Right as it clusters, you can literally just do your W and melt through this entire wave very quickly. And I noticed a lot of Mephisto players weren't doing this, but it's a really fast way to drop down waves. One of the major reasons why you don't want to do this is because this only lowers cooldowns on heroes hit, meaning that all the minions, you're going to use this and go on a full cooldown if you use it to kill minions. However, same deal with Maev, sometimes you just have to do it so you have that wave clear. So I'm going to turn off toggle cooldowns, and we are going to get into the builds. Now that we know what his abilities do, let's talk about his Q build. So his Q build is, again, a slow-moving projectile. At level 1, you get a quest, and this quest makes it to where if you hit 20 people, it buffs up its damage, 40 people, it lowers its cooldown. Let's complete the quest really quick, and you can see the cooldown is now, let's turn off toggle cooldowns, let's complete the quest. The cooldown's now only 5 seconds, and it reduces itself pretty quickly. So if you do hit heroes with it, you're lowering the cooldown very, very fast. You really only need to hit 2 heroes to lower the cooldown back down to nothing. That means that also your Ws are going to have a really low cooldown because your Q is going to keep lowering the cooldown of your Ws. Your Ws are going to keep lowering the cooldown of your Q. And this is without any special cooldowns on. Then with the Q build, you can also get bonus healing. You can go into whatever E. I always like the armor. Whatever ult you want, I'm going to get the root, as well as you can get bonus spell damage, and you can make it to where your Lightning Nova explodes if it's on the same target. So to show you kind of what this all look like, you've got like this going on, and there's big explosions. You're lowering cooldowns. You're getting Qs off repeatedly, and you're also getting these giant explosions that are going off, dealing something like 1,000 DPS at this level, and it's just a very powerful build. But I will say, if the enemies aren't clustered or stuck in small areas, this is an easy skill shot to accidentally dodge, which is why I don't actually like the Q build that much. Let's reset it and talk about the W build. The W build is probably my favorite of the builds because I feel like it's the most impactful in short fights, and it's still pretty scary in long fights. So you get the W talent at 1, which makes it to where every 5th hit from a Lightning Nova deals 197 damage. This can proc, I believe, twice per Lightning Nova. So you see the 197, and I was out for a second. So let's do cooldowns. So let's say, oh, I did toggle cooldowns. Now watch this. Procs once and procs again. So it can definitely get off 2 strikes on a single target. Now, the other thing about this, and it's against the same target, so the most you're ever going to get is twice off the same target, but most likely you're only going to hit this once on each person that you're hitting your W with. Still, it's a nice burst of damage that is unexpected from enemies, and it does scale. So at level 20, it's doing 197 bonus damage. Earlier levels, it's a little bit less, but it is still a scary amount of damage. So one thing that I recommend with people is get used to his W range, because it's going to be really nice, but there's actually an easy trick to this. Your auto attack range is the same range as your W. So if you were to step back away from an enemy, you right click onto him, and now you're in W range. See how easy that is? It's going to make Mephisto a really nice hero for new players, because it's actually, his abilities are pretty simple when you get used to him, and they're pretty easy to get used to because he naturally gets into the range and positions he needs to be able to work. But I think he's going to be an absolute monster on those players who really get used to him and make sure that they can teleport in and get the W off on multiple targets, moving in and out and getting all that burst. It's an incredible amount of burst. Level 4, if you're going W build, extra W damage means that you get bigger shields. So I like getting the static barrier so I can jump in, get a lot of damage off, and get a giant shield when I get back from the teleport. And then my cooldowns get lowered, and I can walk in the next time and get my next W off, deal some damage. And then by the next time my E's back up, I do the same thing, jump back in. And it allows you to take a lot of damage in fights, and the fights that last a long time, you get a lot of shields from it. Level 7, you have 3 choices. You can either go for armor, you can make it to where it slows enemies, and there was actually a question about this of whether the slow was on the shade itself or the jump. So I'm going to reset talents, and I'm going to answer that question really quick. So I'm going to jump to him, and it doesn't slow him. The slow is around the actual shade itself. So I'm going to jump away. It slows him in this shade. So there was a little bit of confusion on that because the wording was interesting. And then the last one is you get movement speed when you jump back. Or sorry, when it's active, you get movement speed. And then when you jump back, you remove all slows and roots. It's okay. I personally find that I didn't have an issue with me jumping back and needing to worry about slows or roots. So I like the armor so I can jump in, take the least amount of damage while I'm in there, and then jump out and be safe, get healed up, and go back in again. So I always like to get the armor at 7. But so let's go back to the W build really quick. W on this talent, I'm going to get my armor. Again, ult, we just need to pick something. And then we go into, at this level, there's no W talent. So you can either go the spell power if you really want to get more damage with your W, or you can make it to where your abilities reduce the cooldown of your ultimate ability, which is what I usually get. Because I want, the W hits a lot. You're going to be focusing on getting a lot of damage off of W, so getting more ults is always nice. So I like that. Now, Lightning Nova can do % damage is a stupid amount. Like, once you get this talent, you can really blow up like anyone. In this case, watch me go into melee range, use my W, and watch how much damage Arthas takes. Like 50% of his health. Let's refresh forts really quick, and I'm going to show you how much I can do to an Arthas that's just hanging out with just a W. This isn't any other ability. This is literally just W. So let's wait until he gets into this lane. So once again, the Arthas is here. I get into melee range, or your auto attack range. Look at how much, 50% of a tank's health on an ability that you can do multiple times during a fight. I'm going to turn off toggle cooldowns for a second and show you what it would look like in a normal fight, where you're just constantly going in and out. You're constantly getting all of your stuff off. and trying to get your W stacks on him. And now the fights naturally are going to be a little bit less of him watching me specifically, and it's going to be him looking at a lot of other things as well. So it's literally just like melting him down. It's a stupid amount of damage. So what I found when you were doing this in actual fights, when the tanks aren't paying attention to just you, but they're paying attention to 100 other things, it's a very, very quick way to blow up someone who's not paying attention. And anyone in the front line really gets blown up. So people are just kind of hanging out. You're going in there, you pop your abilities, get off some damage. And... oh, not quite enough to burn it up. The other thing about it, too, is the more enemies you hit, the faster it gets up to that percent, that 40%. So on a single target, you have to get all of the entire thing off on it for it to get that 12% hero damage or health damage. But if you're with a bunch of enemies, it actually stacks much faster. I'll show you this in just a second. So watch this. And boom, there's the percent health damage. It did it about 3 times faster. So you can see my DPS is something like 3,000 in a team fight. It's absolutely insane how much damage. And you saw the shield was so much bigger. Look how big this shield is when you're doing percent health damage. It's more than your max health. That's how powerful that shield is. So this build is absolutely incredible. In my opinion, this was the most impactful build. Like, I was really terrifying. And this is the game that I'm going to be showing you in a couple days when I post it, is the W spec. It's pretty good. And I wasn't even that good at it. I think when people get good at it, it's going to be even scarier. And then at level 20, he has a bunch of options. You can either upgrade your ultimate abilities, you can get a Mimic to where you summon an extra one, or your Shade also does your W, or you can get to where you can swap places with your Shade. I found it best to just upgrade your ults, but I could see how the Mimic can get a lot of value. I just didn't really like using Mimic that aggressively in fights, to have my Mimic in the same area where I'm at. Say, for instance, I'm like, I think the best bet would be like right here, and then I just teleport right here and use my W on everyone. Like in the perfect scenario, that's a lot of damage, but honestly, it's not really worth it. I would rather use my W for a safe amount of burst damage and then be able to jump away and be safe, rather than have my W have anything. So I just like upgrading the ults, or you can have it to where you can swap positions with it. That's always nice too. So that is essentially his W build. Let's reset talents, talk about his auto attack build really quick. And people have been saying this is also going to be his solo lane build, but I could see his Q build possibly being a solo lane build. But this is, if they said any chance he was going to be a solo laner, they said this is probably going to be it. But I still think that the Q build would do it, just because you can heal people, or you can heal yourself by hitting heroes with your Q. But I don't know. So this is what they're saying. Pick up anything, doesn't really matter. And then basic attack, splash, and then animosity. And so the point of this build is to make it to where your auto attacks reduce the cooldown of your abilities. Then your picking up regen globes heals you more, as well as lowers all the cooldown of your abilities by 0.5 seconds whenever you get a tick of a regen globe, which is huge. So you're reducing your cooldowns by a lot. I'm gonna go pick up a regen globe really quick. Let me toss out all my abilities. Now watch my cooldowns. Watch 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You know, it's a lot faster cooldowns. So it heals you more, and it lowers your cooldowns more often. It's just a really strong talent. Same thing at the other levels. Now, you get basic attack splash. This means while you're attacking heroes, you can lower your cooldowns of your abilities faster with anger. And so you're auto-attacking, and then you use your abilities, and now watch the cooldown. See how fast they're going down? Like, you can literally have your W going permanently as long as you're attacking with your abilities. So that's why this build is pretty good, is it's the most consistent damage. And then at Animosity makes it to where when you basic attack, your Lightning Nova does an immediate pulse of Lightning Nova damage. So if we were to set the game speed down to slower, and then we were to use the W, you can see how it's proccing about, I don't know, 3 times a second or something. Now what we're going to do is we're going to toggle cooldowns, and we're going to do a W and auto attack, and you can see how the auto attack is making extra procs go off. So it's really nice, and it's only when you auto attack, so the splash itself isn't triggering multiple times for hitting multiple heroes. It's still only doing the one time, but it is getting that extra proc off here and there, which is pretty nice. So it is probably the most consistent damage of these specs, but I've tried it a couple times, and it's pretty hard to make it work. So, but another thing, you can do your W and you can make it to where it lasts longer. But I don't even think you really need to pop this that much because your W is going to be permanently off cooldown. As you can see, the double length of the W is pretty cool. But honestly, you don't really need it. So that's that. And then level 20, again, you can go with whatever. I usually just upgrade the ults. So we've talked about pretty much every talent, or at least every build. Now, what are some of the extra talents that you might be able to pick that are outside of the builds that I mentioned? Well, if we reset the talents, we see that there's a thing that says Shade of Mephisto gives spell power. We've talked about all of these in the different builds, so it doesn't really matter. Let's go with these skull heals. And then there's, again, these ones. We've talked about all of these. I still like the armor. We've talked about the ults, and we'll talk more about the ults when we get there later. Then, again, we haven't talked too much about all of these, but, again, we can get extra spell power here, and then we can get a, I don't know, percent health damage doesn't go up with spell power, so let's just say we got this. So you can get extra spell power by, like, jumping in and landing Qs on different heroes, and then you can do quite a lot of damage with your abilities if you did go, like, a hybrid build or snuck one of those talents in. But either way, there's a lot of talents you can go for. There's a lot of variation in his builds, which is why I really like it, but it's all synergy-based. So if you're going to pick one thing that increases your spell power, you're probably going to want to have a reason for it. And if you're going to pick something for Q, you normally want to get all the Q talents, etc. Makes sense. Now let's talk about his ultimate abilities. So he has two ultimate abilities. One, people like to call it the Karthus ult. It is very reminiscent of Karthus ult. One of the major things about this ult is that it doesn't deal as much as you would think it does. Like, you feel like, oh, if you could get someone down to like 10% health, it's going to be, oh, let me bring up game speed. This is way too slow. Say you get this Arthas down. Oh, let's get him down a little bit further, and you're like, oh, let's finish off Arthas, right? That seems like the amount of health that a Karthus could normally finish someone off. So you're like, all right, let's finish off Arthas. It's not that much damage. He did also heal himself there, but this is probably enough to finish him off. It's not. So you can see how it's, I mean, the minions did it, but you can see how it's a decent amount, and it does a lot more on assassins, but it's a little bit tricky. It's one of those that can be challenging to get the right amount of damage off on someone. His other ult's the one that I kept seeing, like, every time I would play Mephisto, someone would be playing, like, Medivh or something, and I'm like, I'm never going to be able to kill anyone with this, so I'm going to go the other ult, right? Well, my problem with the other ult is how difficult it is to land. When I saw it in the video, it seemed like it was this really quick cast that immediately fired out and did a bunch. It's actually really slow. So let's say I try to max range it on this Arthas right here. See how long that takes? Like, he could leave. He could leave during this time. Let me go in a position down here where he might move around and watch. Like, he can move so much before that cast actually goes off. And it's a crazy how much variance there is, because I even tried to lead that shot a little bit. I can go again, maybe fire it right here, and it's like if he steps away, I just noticed when I was playing the game, it was very, very difficult to land because it has such a delay and such a slow travel time. So you kind of need to hit people that are already CC'd, which is not what an ult is supposed to be. Ults are meant to be, you set up the fight, and this is more of like a follow-up to a fight that's already started, and it needs to be on targets that aren't moving very much. So it gets really difficult to actually land this and get it effectively. But the cool part is if you can land it, let's say I lead it enough, you can do a lot of damage while someone's in there. And the other thing is the level 20 upgrade to this thing, where it silences them for 3 seconds, is huge. So, I mean, you fire this thing out, and then you start silencing them afterwards. Now they can't heal themselves. It's huge. So I actually really did like this ult when it did land, but I will warn you guys, it is an ult that is very difficult to land. So I would highly recommend getting much better at figuring out how to land that. So those are his two ults. The upgrade to his other ult makes it to where you get 1 reset after you get a kill, as well as it makes it to where it does 10% of their missing health. So let's say, for instance, we get this guy down 50%. That means he's going to take an extra 5% of his health when we use it. I wish he would just, like, get back here. So now we can see he's a little bit above 50%, but you can see, boom, it does a decent chunk of damage now. I'm just going to get him down lower. You can see how the lower he gets, the lower or the more damage it does. So now that he's getting really low, I'm actually going to toggle my cooldowns off, and I'm going to get him low by myself. And then I'm going to use my ult. Boom. Takes him out this time. And if you kill someone with it, it recasts once again. It's not a reset, but it recasts one time after you kill someone. That means, say for instance, you kill someone and then the recast kills someone, it doesn't reset again. It only will recast the one time, which makes it to where it's a good thing if you kill one person like early in a fight, because then you get that reset and everyone takes a huge chunk of their health. But it can get a little wonky if you're just trying to get a lot of value out of it. So I think both of his ults are very valuable. I think both of them will see play, but I think in the most scenario, we're probably going to see Durance of Hate more than Consume Souls, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. And that is Mephisto. Those are the builds that I would recommend. I will have a game of him out in a few days, so feel free to subscribe, check out the channel, because I've played a few games with him, and I took one of the games where I really felt like I got the build down and I understood how he's supposed to work, and I'll be posting that build, or that video probably in a couple days. Thank you all for watching.